Okay, shalom. Right, we've got a wonderful lesson coming up. This is really incredible stuff. Okay, so it's the concept of Tisha B'Av, which is the 9th of Av, the day the temples were destroyed and all kinds of other atrocities that have happened throughout history regarding the Jewish people. And the concept that on that same day of destruction, Mashiach himself will be born. Okay, so this is very, very interesting stuff. So we've got this concept of Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, the 9th of the month of Av, and Moshiach. Where do we get it from? From Jerusalem Talmud Berachoth 2:4. So I'm going to read you this, and as I'm reading it, I want you to try and make some connections, because it's a lot of it is coded messages, and we've got to sort of decode and then overlay that onto the whole tapestry of history that we're presented with. Okay, so the Rebbis say the King Mashiach, if he is from the living, his name is David. Okay, if he is from the dead, his name is David. So even there, that's a very, very powerful code. Okay. Rebbi Tanh said, I am declaring the reason, taken from Psalm 18:51. He gives kindness to his anointed to David. Rebbi Yoshua ben Levi said, his name is Tanach, which means the branch. Rebbi Yudan, the son of Rebbi Aivu, said, his name is Menachem. Anina, the son of Rebbi Abbahu, said, they have no disagreement, since the numerical value of one is the numerical value of the other. Tzemech is equal to Menachem. So Tzemech, which means branch, is equal to Menachem, which means comforter or consoler. Okay, so we can, even that word Menachem, the comforter, the consoler, we can see that how that's linked to prophecy regarding Moshiach, because we will be sent a comforter, which is the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. Since Rebbi Yudan, by the way, they're both 138, so it's the regular gematria with which they're equal. Since Rebbi Yudan, the son of Rebbi Aivu, said, it happened to a Jew who was ploughing the valley of Arbel that his ox, bearing in mind ox is a coded message for Yosef, it's a coded term for Yosef, who is the Shah Tamim, the innocent ox. Valley of Arbel, that his ox, we're up to here, was bellowing. An Arab passed by and heard the bellowing of the ox. He said to him, Jew, unharness your ox and unharness your plow, because the temple was destroyed. The ox bellowed a second time. He said, Jew, harness your ox, fix your plow, because King Moshiach has been born. He said to him, what is his name? Menachem. He said to him, what is his father's name? Izqiah. He said to him, where is he? He said to him, at the king's palace in Bethlehem in Judea. He went and sold his ox and plough, and he made himself a vendor of baby linens. He went to towns and left towns until he came to that town. All the women bought from him, but the mother of Menachem did not buy. She heard the women say, Menachem's mother, come and buy for your son. She said, I would rather strangle him like a hater of Israel, because he was born on the day the temple was destroyed. He said to her, I like him, because for him it was destroyed, and for him it will be rebuilt. She said to him, I have no money. He said to her, that does not bother me, come and buy for him. If you have nothing with you today, I shall return another day and I will take it then. After some time he went up to the town and said to her, how was your baby doing? She said to him, after you had seen me, there came storms and raised him and tore him from my hands. Rebbi Abun said, we do not need to learn from that Arab. Is it not a full verse? This is Isaiah 10:35. The Lebanon will fall through a noble one. And the next verse, 11:1, a sprout will come from the stem of Jesse. Okay, the reason why they're connected is because the word and is at the beginning of 11:1. So what's this Rebbi Abun saying? He's saying that even our scriptures tell us that on the day that the Lebanon is... the day that the Lebanon falls, the Lebanon is coded message for the Beis HaMikdash. On that day, the Mashiach will be born, because the verses in Isaiah state this. Okay, so there's basically a lot of coded messages in there. The Lebanon, however, is the Beis HaMikdash. Let's go and have a look at this. Okay, so this is the end of chapter of Isaiah, chapter 10. It says, and the thickets and the forests will be cut off with iron, and the Lebanon shall fall through a mighty one. So Lebanon code name for Moshiach, the Beis Hamikdash. And then you've got the beginning of 11:1, and a shoot shall spring forth from the stem of Jesse, Yishai, and a twig shall sprout from his roots. Okay, so that's where you get the concept of the tzemech, the branch, from. It's all connected to here, what we've got here. Okay, all very interesting stuff. However, let's go and have a look at why the Beis Hamikdash is called the Lebanon. Okay, so 6 reasons the Beis Hamikdash is called a Lebanon. So all these are beautiful. Just go through them very quickly. One that is not mentioned is this Jerusalem stone that they use. They use the highest quality of the Jerusalem limestone, which is white. So it's connected to the word Lebanon, which is connected to the word white, Levan. The word Lebanon usually, we'll just go through here. There's 6 reasons. You can read this for yourself, but it cleanses sins. The Beis Hamikdash whitens and cleanses the Jewish people from their sins. Levan means white. As it says, if your sins will be like scarlet, I will make them as white as snow. This was accomplished by the many sacrifices offered in the Beis Hamikdash. So it's made out of the cedars of Lebanon. That's point 2. It was near a forest. Point 3. Point 4. Frankincense was offered there. And frankincense is Lebanon. Because of the colour, it's white. I've got some examples of frankincense here. Hopefully you can see that. This is the highest quality frankincense. It's white. It's also got a green tinge to it. This is the highest quality, like royal frankincense possible. Sometimes ordinarily, if you get it, like this is some frankincense that I use, and then there's some of it that actually is white. It's opaque as opposed to got a translucent quality to it. That's more opaque, if you can see. So that's where you get the whiteness, the Lebanon frankincense. It smells absolutely wonderful. Similar to the word Lebanon, was an important ingredient. In this sense, the name Lebanon is like the name Ha Moriah, in that both refer to incense burned in the Beis Hamikdash. Moriah alludes to myrrh, another spice that was used in the incense. Bearing in mind that our body is also a temple, and we are programmed up with exile. Our body is not able to perceive and be conscious of Yoteh, because we are in exile, and what we are conscious of is all the troubles and worries and stresses and strains and anxiety associated with life at this time in exile. All the corruption, all the influence, all the programming of our brain for exile, to keep us away from consciousness of Yoteh. Okay, so we are not serving Yoteh, we were serving every other thing apart from him, usually. Frankincense and myrrh, however, have a power, but they've both got psychoactive effects, so that they can literally positively affect the state of your mind for good. And I use it all the time, and I really do believe it's got a wonderful calming effect. Plus, it's able to excite your brain in healthy ways, not fear and anxiety and dread, but enthusiasm and joy and love. And so I'm a real big supporter and promoter of things like frankincense and myrrh. And the fact is that the name Lebanon, which is a name for the Beis Hamikdash, is connected to it. To me, when we are trapped, destroyed, our literal body, which is our temple, is destroyed in a way from serving Yoteh on account of the fact that we're so programmed up to serve anything and everything other than him. We're afraid, we're serving the fear that we presented within exile. We're serving the doubts that exile presents to us. We are responding in our thought, word and deed to what's going on out there. And we're not tuned in to godly consciousness enough to be able to say that we are a holy temple serving only Yoteh. Frankincense and myrrh have got a power to rectify that through decoding our brain from all that exilic mindset, reprogramming it up. Even the scent itself is wonderful. So the Beis Hamikdash, point 5, he was elevated spiritually above the rest of the world, just as trees are elevated above the ground from which they grow. So this again is the cedars of Lebanon. And it was built of cedars of Lebanon to remind us that we are to be elevated above all the exilic temptations and exilic mindsets and exilic worries and concerns that life in exile presents to us. It's our challenge to rise above it. And even going up to Jerusalem, you've got the Shir Hamalot, the Songs of Ascent, which are Psalms 120 to 134 inclusive. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful psalms of elevation. Divine wisdom and knowledge was found there. So going back to what we were just saying about how we've got to unlock our mind and our intellectual capacities from serving exile, from pursuing the vanity and emptiness of exile. Of course, we've got to deal with the reality that we're living in, but we can't serve it for the sake of itself. We've got to only be able to deal with it for that higher purpose of serving Yod Heh Waw and nothing else beside him. So the word Lebanon is made of two words, lev, which means heart, circumcised heart, which is a gematria of 32, and nun, which as a letter, the letter nun spelt out, as a gematria of 50. This refers to the 32 paths of Chochmah, divine wisdom, and the 50 gates of Bina, divine understanding, that were revealed in the Beis Hamikdash. Again, we've got to have the frankincense and the myrrh to get our intellectual capacity and faculty serving Yod Heh Waw. We're conscious of Yod Heh Waw and nothing else beside him. So there's a purpose in that. Okay, so Tisha B'Av then, the day the temple was destroyed, the Lebanon. Right, and then we've got this phenomena, which to me is a wonderful trace through history, how history, we can look back and see how the sages in their prophecy, as was written in the Jerusalem Talmud, and then the whole course of events that's happened throughout the history, the last 2,000 years of history, but going back to the destruction of the temple, where we were then exiled into Edomite exile, how we can use that particular point in history to give birth to a revelation of who Moshiach is, who is the Moshiach that the sages talked about, and who has been proved faithful to represent the office of Moshiach in the history in which we have actually lived and experienced. So there's this wonderful article here, The Amazing Christian Escape from AD 70 Destruction of Jerusalem. Okay, that it's there if you want to read it. I'm not going to be reading it all. I've just selected some of it. So go back to the, let me just pull this down so hopefully I'm not obscuring the thing. So The Amazing Christian Escape of AD 70 Destruction of Jerusalem. It's a 2-page article. All of it's absolutely wonderful. I haven't got time to go through absolutely all of it, so I'm just going to focus on some of the key points just to emphasise the fact that Moshiach was born on Tisha B'Av. He was born through his ability to guide his flock and for his prophecy to come true perfectly. He was born. The true shepherd of Israel was born that day, and he also exposed the false shepherd and the false teachers of Israel that day as well. Okay, let's go and have a look. Why? Okay, so this is just some sections from that article that we've just looked at. Very interesting stuff, because we should have been able to identify who the Mashiach was based on what had happened on Tisha B'Av, and based on the fact that his words came true and the flock that followed the advice of their shepherd were all saved. Okay, and it was a very miraculous salvation, by the way. And yet, after this, when it came to the, the Bar Chochmah revolt, who was proclaimed to be Messiah by Rabbi Akiva, sometime after the destruction of the temple, but again a rebellion against the Romans, they followed the false teacher and they perished as a consequence. Okay, as well at that time. So the distinction should have been made between Yeshua and Bar Chochmah, who was declared the Mashiach by Rabbi Akiva, and contrast should have been made as to the end result, i.e. the ones that followed Yeshua lived and the ones that didn't perished. Okay, so let's just read this. I hope you're going to follow what I'm saying. The fact that Yeshua's prophecy regarding this day came true so exactly and resulted in such a massive salvation, which his name means Saviour. They were saved on account of his prophecy and his guidance, and his flock was preserved because they listened to the words of their shepherd. Okay, whereas by contrast, when the Jews listened to Rabbi Akiva and the whole revolt of Bar Kokhba, they perished, and it was very devastating, the consequences of that. Okay, but let's just read this article because it's really quite incredible. When the Roman legions destroyed Judea and Jerusalem in AD 70, Josephus says that more than 1,100,000 Jews perished and nearly 100,000 were taken captive. In Rome's ancient forum, the Arch of Titus, which still stands, depicts Jewish captives in chains and Roman soldiers carrying the seven-branch temple candlestick, the menorah, on their shoulders. Yet while the Jews suffered starvation, slaughter and capture, their fellow Christians, they were not Christians. These were fellow believing Jews in Jerusalem. Okay, so we've got to make a distinction. They were not Christians at this time. They was not Christians to what we understand Christians to be now, which are Romanized to the degree that they have been Romanized. These people were Torah observant Jewish men and women that believed Yeshua was the Saviour and the promised Messiah. Okay, fellow Christians in Jerusalem escaped. How were the Christians spared? About 37 years before the destruction, Jesus had foretold the terrible events that would follow his death. He warned his followers to immediately flee Jerusalem when the signs he predicted occurred. The Christian community carefully watched for the signs and followed the Saviour's warning. The Lord first identified the situation leading up to the destruction. Many would deceive the people by saying that they were prophets or even Christ himself. So you had, not prior to that, but you had after that, Bar Kokhba declaring himself as Messiah, and he proved to be a false Messiah, whereas Mashiach Yeshua proved himself to be a true Mashiach. The disciples would be delivered up and afflicted, hated of all nations. Betrayal and iniquity would abound, and love of many would turn cold. See Matthew 24:10-12. Okay. The Lord then taught the two major signs that would alert believers to flee. When ye shall see Jerusalem encompassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. He also said, when you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them be which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of the house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. So this was a very powerful warning. They were saying, don't even give thought to remain at all. You see these signs, you're out. Get out straight away. Don't even think about going back and getting your possessions or anything like that. Of the abomination of desolation to which Jesus referred, Daniel wrote, they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate, Daniel 11:31. The abomination that happened in 170 BC when the Syrian king Antiochus the fourth ordered a massacre in Jerusalem, profaned the altar of the temple and carried away the temple treasures. The horrifying events under Antiochus were familiar to every Jew, and those were Jesus' reference to Daniel vividly understood the Saviour's prophecies. Among the tragedies that the Lord said would happen was the destruction of the temple. The magnificent structure Solomon had built had already been destroyed and rebuilt twice. Well, this was the second time. It would be destroyed again, and the Jews scattered to the four corners of the earth. It'd been destroyed once, and then it got destroyed again. It will be destroyed again a third. It will be rebuilt again a third time with Mashiach. Okay, so all very interesting stuff. It's incredible, though. We've got to start to make the connections. At this point, he should have been revealed to be the Mashiach, but he wasn't. He was still denied the truth. There was a blindness. The truth was denied, and then there went on even after this the Bar Kokhba rebellion came after this, many years after, and the false Messiah came after this, and he proved to be utterly and absolute futility, in the revolt against Rome. It's all because Yeshua, Yod-Heh-Wah-Weh, had a plan for us to go into Edomite exile, and both camps needed to be split into two. There's reason for why absolutely everything happened. There had to be a division between the believers, the Jewish believers in Yeshua, and the non-believers, because one would constitute the camp of Yehuda and one would constitute the camp of Yosef, and both had to go into the Edomite exile, and both had to remain separate camps. And Rabbi Akiva accomplished that for the house of Judah, and Apostle Paul accomplished that for the house of Yosef. Both went into exile, and both was preserving the name. I've talked about this before. One is the stick of Yosef, and one is the stick of Yehuda, and both are representations, both are revelations of the name of Yod-Heh-Wah-Weh. The one is the Torah of Moshe that reveals the name of Yod-Heh-Wah-Weh within the letter of the law, and one is the Torah of Mashiach ben Yosef that reveals the name Yod-Heh-Wah-Weh above the letter of the Torah. Okay, let's have a look at this. So this is towards the end. It says, unfortunately, the New Testament is silent concerning the fulfillment of Savior's prophecies in Matthew 24. So the New Testament doesn't bear witness to it, but history does. History, however, reveals that his prophecies were realised. It also reveals the stunning facts that the believers obeyed the warnings, fled Jerusalem to a town called Pella. Bear in mind, Pella Yoetz, wonderful counsellor. Pella means wonder, or wonderful, Pella. And it's also connected to miracle as well. And thus saved themselves. The early Christian scholar Eusebius wrote, the whole body, however, of the church at Jerusalem, having been commanded by a divine revelation given to men of approved piety before the war, removed from the city and dwelt at a certain town beyond the Jordan called Pella. Epiphanes also, I think that's how you say it, also attested to the Christian escape. According to the Bible scholar Adam Clark, the latter wrote, it is very remarkable that not a single Christian perished, not a single Jew who believed that Yeshua was the Mashiach perished. They weren't Christians by this time. They'd been living in Yehuda. They were part of Yehuda. Not a single believing Jew perished in the destruction of Jerusalem, though there were many there when Cestius Gallus invested the city, and had he persevered in the siege, it would soon have rendered himself master of it. But when he unexpectedly and unaccountably raised the siege, the Christians, the believing Jews, took the opportunity to escape. As Vespasian was approaching with his army, all who believed in Moshiach Yeshua left Jerusalem and fled to Pella and other places beyond the river Jordan, and so they all marvellously escaped the general shipwreck of their country. Not one of them perished. Pella must not have been the only destination of fleeing believing Jews, but it was the most prominent at the time. The flight to Pella took place in AD 66 during the attack of Gallus. 4 years later came the fall of Jerusalem. Titus laid siege to the city, and his battering rams brought down the great walls. The Jews, who were already suffering from plunder, murder, pestilence and famine among themselves, were easy prey for the fire and swords of the 10th Roman Legion. And we know the horror what they actually experienced during the siege of Jerusalem, and then the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. It was horrific. But like I say, out that day, the fact that every Christian, every believing Jew who paid attention to the shepherd Yeshua received that salvation. His name means salvation. Their Saviour saved them and delivered them from this horrific horror. He should have been born in our consciousness that day. But the destruction of the temple being called the Lebanon, which is the 32 paths of wisdom, Chokhmah, and the 50 gates of understanding, somehow that was destroyed. And the Jewish people that remained were not able to perceive or become conscious of the fact that Moshiach Yeshua was born that day, through his prophecy being completely fulfilled and the resulting incredible salvation that occurred as a consequence of his sheep following the voice of their shepherd. Okay, it's all glorious stuff. Let's look at this, however. This is taken from a book, a really, really wonderful rabbi. It's from this book, I to the infinite. You need to get the absolute up-to-date version to get this, because this, what is written about Tisha B'Av, is not actually in my copy. When it comes to, there's a little bit about the festivals, the different festivals. This bit is not in. I'm not going to read all that because it's basically telling you about all the horrific stuff that's happened on Tisha B'Av. However, just from reading about here, it's just basically saying Tisha B'Av occurs at the height of summer, but it's connected to Hanukkah, the rededication of the temple, that happens at the height of winter. So you've got at the height of summer this horrific darkness, the longest day of the summer, and horrific darkness, whereas, you know, the shortest day, and you've got this tremendous rededication of the Beis Hamikdash. So you've got this connection between Tisha B'Av and Hanukkah. We know there's a connection between Tisha B'Av and even the what Yeshua spoke at Hanukkah, the festival of dedication. It's absolutely wonderful. It's talking about my flock hear my voice, you know. It's all wonderful stuff. It's all connected in a way because they did hear his voice and they fled when they needed to flee, and they will be there when it comes to rebuilding the Beis Hamikdash. Okay. Let's have a look. Where's the best place to start? So this is basically telling you all the horrific stuff that's happened. All I've got is a photograph of this that I took from the internet when the person who wrote the book released this. He was going to put it into a new edition. I do believe it went into a new edition, but like I say, I've not got the newest edition, so my copy doesn't have it in. I've only got a photograph, small photograph that I downloaded off Facebook, so it's not the best quality. So I'll read it to you anyway. Yet, though it bewails a long night of exile, the darkest day in the Jewish calendar falls at the height of summer, on the brightest, longest day, the shortest night for the land of Israel and most of the diaspora, out of all the important days and festivals in the calendar. Tisha B'Av. The Midrash, Talmud and Kabbalah and the Jewish people are compared to the moon. This is going to be coming up when we go to do the Gematria because it's very much related to the sun and the moon. So bear that in mind when we come to do the Gematria. While the other nations are compared to the sun. So Israel to the moon, nations to the sun. This cannot be simply because the Jewish months are lunar, as other civilizations also had lunar months. Moreover, the Jewish calendar isn't just lunar, it is lunar solar. The years follow the solar seasonal cycle, and we'll see why. I'll show you why. Definitely, the sun is related to the year. We'll come across gematria that shows that. The months keep in sync with the sun, year, and seasons. Rather, since the Jewish people are called witnesses to God, that's from. I presume that's Yeshayahu 43, 10 and 12. Their continued existence, despite the continual attempts to annihilate them, God forbid, serving has constantly been proved to God's existence and that he is forever active in the world. The moon, which symbolises God's presence, the Shekinah, also represents the Jewish people, or Bnei Israel. Okay, so when you're getting reading any books about from a Jewish, they'll always say Jewish people. They don't very rarely say Bnei Israel. They don't always include the house of Yosef in that. It's always about Yehuda. While the sun symbolises God's essence and eternal relationship with his people, accordingly, our lunar solar calendar, which reflects the dance of the sun and moon and their symbiotic relationship, characterises our innate connection with God. Also, the sun is related, the moon is related to Mashiach ben David, who is from the house of Yehuda. Okay, and this is what will dominate in his reign. The sun, however, is connected to Mashiach ben Yosef, when the Gematria will come across and show that. Okay, thus the analogy of the sun to the other nations epitomises God's exile. So when it's saying that the sun is represented by the nations, also the lost house of Yosef, which is lost in the nations, is represented by the sun. And that's what we want. We want the union between the sun and the moon to return to the side of holy. At this time, the sun is dominated over by the nations because the house of Yosef is exiled there, and he's not yet been fully revealed, just as Yosef was in Pharaoh's household, looking like a pharaoh. Thus, the analogy of the sun to the other nations epitomises God's exile, as it were, the usurpance of his place, the unwillingness to acknowledge his supremacy and being. Only in the Messianic era, when knowledge of God and his providence will fill the world, that's Yeshayahu 11:9, when all humanity will recognise that only he can help, will the Son finally revert to its symbolism of God in the world. Okay, so that Yosef will be revealed as being a testimony to the name of Yod-Heh-Wah-Weh and nothing else beside him. That's the stick of Yosef. It is this that we long for on Tisha B'Av. For though Tisha B'Av represents the midnight of the soul, the deepest part of the night when all is black, it's also the turning point, when we can start looking forward to the approaching dawn. As discussed earlier, every birth involves a disintegration of the previous form, i.e. a type of death, thus a woman becomes ritually unclean on giving birth. As a seed germinates through its own decomposition, so all new life depends upon the breakdown of the old. Tisha B'Av is the secret of the decomposition of the old and the rebirth of the new. We are in a process of a 2,000-year rebirth of Moshiach, but guarantee that we need to go back to the seed. We need to go back to the point of conception, Tisha B'Av, or the birth of Moshiach. He was birthed then, but we've had this 2,000 years where that has all been exiled, and this light and this truth has been kidnapped by the nations, all by the will of Yod-Heh-Wah-Weh. He's been preparing us for that final revelation, hasn't he? Crying breaks down the old and prepares for the new. So this is like the sorrow that must be transformed into joy. This whole period of Mashiach ben Yosef, this whole 2,000 years of Mashiach ben Yosef prior to the revelation of Mashiach ben David, there's a lot of sorrow involved in that, isn't there? It's a suffering servant. We've all been suffering this horrific exile. We've all been serving something other than Yod-Heh-Wah-Weh as a consequence. Because our temple is broken down and destroyed. We haven't got the mental capacity to serve in truth, Yod-Heh-Wah-Weh. We're not even able to fully perceive him, because what's staring us in front in our faces, all the exilic influences and all the powers of exile. So crying breaks through sitting on the ground, also a form of self-abnegation with Shekinah, and crying for the Shekinah, connecting with it and feeling the pain of the divine presence in exile and its degradation. One initiates the light of its rebirth and awakening. Thus, the Masters explain the Talmud's statement, whosoever mourns of Jerusalem merits and sees its joy, as meaning sees its joy in the present, as the very act of crying and mourning creates its rebirth, so that he who does so experiences the secret of our sages saying, Moshiach, son of David, is born on Tisha B'Av. Okay, so there's all kinds of mystical stuff involved in that as well, isn't there? But I hope you can see there's some powerful connections, and I wanted to show this because it made the analogy between the sun and the moon. And that's another important thing that comes up in the Gematria when you look at the Gematria of Tisha B'Av. So I definitely wanted to go through that. Right, what's coming up next? Right, so it's good. We're going to be looking at the Gematria. Before this, I just wanted to go and have a look at the Kochba rebellion, just to prove how the anti-Mashiach caused such devastation, and in contrast to the true Mashiach who caused such salvation. Okay, so nowhere am I going to go through that, but I just wanted to point out here, look, and just so you've got some of the key facts involved in this. So the Bar Chochmah revolt, you can look it up on Wikipedia if you want. It's really down here that I wanted to point out. It's where was it now? Okay, so here, look, I've just wanted to read this bit and then just read a little bit further on. The revolt erupted as a result of religious and political tensions in Judea following the failed first revolt. So this is the revolt that led to the destruction of the temple, where the Jewish believers fled and the ones that didn't perished. Okay, that's what happened. We just read about it. These tensions were related to the establishment of a large Roman military presence in Judea, changes in administrative life and the economy, together with the outbreak and suppression of Jewish revolts from Mesopotamia to Libya and don't know how to pronounce that. These approximate reasons need to be the construction of the new city, Alea Capitolina, hopefully that's how you pronounce it, over the ruins of Jerusalem, and the erection of the temple to Jupiter on the Temple Mount. The Church Fathers and Rabbinic literature emphasises the role of Rufus, governor of Judea, in provoking the revolt. Historian Menah attributes the main cause of the revolt not to the construction of Aelia Capitolina, that's the Roman city, isn't it, around Temple Mount and stuff, or specific Roman policies, but to the charismatic and politically messianic nature of Bar Kokhba himself. Okay, so I apologise that I don't pronounce things. It's because I learn by reading. I don't always pronounce things properly. But hopefully you've got the gist of that. It's down here that it's incredible as well. This bit here. Just to link that in with Rabbi Akiva. Okay, so Rabbi Akiva was a sage who they relied on. The Jewish people that didn't believe that Yeshua was the Mashiach, they were relying on the likes of Rabbi Akiva, but he led them into dreadful destruction, whereas by contrast Yeshua led them to salvation. So Shimon bar Kokhba took the title Nasai of Israel, which means Prince of Israel, and ruled over the entity named Israel that was virtually independent for over 2.5 years. The Jewish sage Rabbi Akiva, who was the spiritual leader of the revolt, identified Shimon bar Kokhba, right, so that's one of his names, I think it's derogatory, as a Jewish Messiah, and gave him the name Bar Kokhba, okay, meaning son of the star in the Aramaic language, from the star prophecy verse from Numbers 24:17, there shall come a star out of Yaakov. The name Bar Kokhba does not appear in Talmud, but in ecclesiastical sources. The era of the redemption of Israel was announced, contracts were signed, and a large quantity of Bar Kokhba revolt coinage was struck over foreign coins. Okay, so hopefully you can see where he originated from, and we can see that based on historians that it was his rebellion that caused the devastation. Okay, and that was what we read up here. So just wanted to give you a little brief thing into that. I'm not an historian, and I certainly, because I'm not overly familiar with the whole, the initial beginnings of the church and things like that. I'm more into the analysis, but you've got to make all the links. And what's so important in the case of Tisha B'Av is the actual historical revelation and the evidence that we've got historically that's pointing to a true revelation of the Mashiach. It brings it into reality for us because we've experienced it, we've lived it. And then when we add up all the dots, the fact that the camp needed to be split in two in order to go into Edomite exile, just as Yaakov had to split Joseph and Yehuda into two camps in order to face Esau, we can start to understand how that actually happened, and how through that we can then see that that house of Joseph did carry a seed of the revelation of Mashiach in there, and that should ultimately give birth to Mashiach ben Dawid in the end. Bearing in mind what is Mashiach ben Dawid that we're waiting for, that's basically a unity between the three Abrahamic faiths. If anybody is to come in the role of Mashiach, he will have to come, and he will have to be somebody who unites all three Abrahamic faiths together. So that is including the house of Joseph, the house of Judah, the Jews, the stick of Moses, the house of Joseph, predominantly the Christians, divested of the evil outer shell, the clipper, and also Islam, together as one. So we've got the stick of Moses, stick of Yehuda, the stick of Joseph, united together as one, and then they united together with the nations that are gathered through Islam. Okay, and it's only the unity of those Abrahamic faiths that really is synonymous with the whole concept of Mashiach ben Dawid. It's got to be that unity, and it's got to be divested from all the outer evil, exilic mindsets that at this time cause that separation. That unity of truth has got to be revealed, and that will be Mashiach ben Dawid. So when it goes, if we go back to that, let's just have a look. So we go back to this saying here. This King Mashiach, if he's from the living, his name is David. If he's from the dead, his name is David. That's basically the unity of all those three Abrahamic faiths. So the founders of all those faiths are all dead, but we who are living witnesses to those founders' revelations that we received through them, i.e. the Jews through Moshe, revelation of Moshe, the Christians through a revelation of Yeshua, who was the founder of Christianity. It was a founder of he was the founder of Christianity. You can't say any other than that. And then Muhammad, who was the founder of Islam. They've all died, yet we live and we bear witness, and we are the body of believers that now represent those three Abrahamic faiths all the way back to the original founders. And when the Mashiach comes, it's got to be a revelation that contains all those aspects of Mashiach. Mashiach, Moshe, Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David, all united together as one. And the dominant aspect of the Mashiach, the final revelation of the Mashiach, is David. Okay, so just to bear that in mind. Now let's go and have a look at some of the gematria. It's absolutely wonderful. Okay, so Tisha B'Av and Moshiach. Right, let's have a look at this gematria. It's wonderful. So we've got Tisha B'Av. This is it spelt out. Tisha B'Av, 780. This is the number that we're going to be looking at in this lesson. All the other numbers are incredible. You'll have to subscribe in order to get the lessons that follow. Okay, so first of all, this is really important. You've got the 5 books of Torah. Now, these 5 books point out something regarding the concept of the Mashiach, because the regular gematria points to a revelation of Mashiach ben David. And we know in the Jerusalem Talmud they used the regular gematria to point out the 2 names that were really meaning. They had the same number, so there was the same meaning, or very much connected. That was Tanach and Menachem, which are both 138. They're in regular gematria. So we know we're talking about Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben David, and he is revealed through the regular gematria. Mashiach ben Yosef is the little one, the Katan. He is revealed through the ordinal, and you need to unite them both together. Okay, so you've got the regular gematria, which is 2,480, which is 5 times 496. So that means the average is 496. And then you've got the ordinal books of the Torah, which add up to 284. If you add the average of each of the books of the Torah, which this represents Mashiach ben David, I'll show you why it represents Mashiach ben David very soon. And this represents Mashiach ben Yosef, and I'll show you why that does. So if we add these 2 numbers up, 496 and 284, it comes to 780. So already we've got this unity between the concept of Mashiach ben David and Mashiach ben Yosef. Let's go show you why. Because we've got this, talking about the moon, we were talking about Tisha B'Av, that is connected to the whole revelation of the moon, that is connected to the Bnei Yisrael, that's connected to Mashiach ben David. Okay, so 496. These are the 3 words used to describe the moon. Hameor Katan Haloila, the moon that is small at night. Comes to 496, those 3 words. 136 ordinally. 136 is the regular and ordinal of Kisei David, the throne of David. Okay. So together they come to 632, which is 2 times 316, 2 times Yeshu. Okay. So Vilna Gaon said that King David sits upon the throne, and David's throne is Mashiach ben Yosef, who is Yeshu. It's his derogatory curse name, but that is who he is, Mashiach ben Yosef, as we will see. How do we know that this moon is to do with King David? Because we've got this phrase here, red with beautiful eyes, and comes to 496. So we know that this moon is referring to King David. Okay, that's also the average of the books of the Torah. So the Torah really is to ultimately reveal the revelation of Mashiach ben Dawid and all that means. What did I say it means? It means a unity between all the three Abrahamic faiths. That's really what we're aiming for. That's the Mashiach of Yod Heh Wah is revealed in the Torah, not in our exiled imaginations. And then we've also got this. 780 is 5 times 156, 5 times Yosef. 780 is 20 times 39. And 39 is the ordinal of Moshe. So again, we've got Yosef and Moshe need to be united as one. The stick of Judah and the stick of Yosef. Mashiach ben Yosef and Moshe, the first Redeemer. We've also got this. 780 is 4 times 195. What's 195? It's Moshe. The ordinal of Moshe filled out this way, and the ordinal of Yeshua filled out this way. And these are the filling out at the level of Yetzirah, where the Vav is filled with an Aleph and the He is filled with an Aleph. Comes to 195. So 4 times 195 is 780. So we see it's connected to Yosef, Moshe, and the unity of Moshe and Yosef together, the 780 Tisha B'Av. This has absolutely got to happen. However, now we start to see, well, if that is related, we can see how clearly the regular of the 5 books of Torah is related to a revelation of King David. We can see through the 496. 496 is also Leviathan, and it's also Malkuth, kingdom. We want the kingdom on earth to be as it is in heaven. Okay, so then we go and have a look at this, which, just let me change this slightly. Right, so we've got the sun. We had the 3 ways that the moon is described, and now we've got the three words that describe the sun. Hameor Agadol Hayom, the sun, the luminary that is big in the day, as opposed to the luminary that is small at night. So if we add those 3 words up, it comes to 355. 355. 355 is the same as Shana, year. So there we've got the sun determining what the year is. Okay, so we're going back to Tisha B'Av again, the whole concept of the lunar solar calendar. The moon, which is represented King David, and the sun, which represents Mashiach ben Yosef, as we're going to see. So then we've got this phenomena here. Okay, we've got this verse, which is really, it's really a verse that's telling us everything that's happening in this exile, and it's allowing us to know what Yod Heh Wah is doing in this exile. It says, "Who forms light and creates darkness, who makes peace and creates evil? I am the Lord who makes all these." So I've done a whole set of teachings before on this verse, so I'm not going to go over it now, but basically that's what we're trying to do. We form in the light from the darkness of exile, and we make in peace, shalom, from the evil that is the nations, that is the evil inclination, that is the outer Esav. We form in light, and this is our soul, and we form in that from the experience our soul is in darkness. Okay, so it's just one of those things that it's Yod Heh Wah that's doing that, because the brightest light comes out of the darkness, and true peace comes when we've created it from the evil that we've experienced, because then we know there's only Yod Heh Wah and nothing else beside him. You know, these things don't exist in and of themselves. So we've got that connection to the sun and to the year. And then we've got this connection up here to the ordinal books of the Torah. Well, if we look down here, the entire regular of that verse is 2,840, which we can see is 10 times the ordinal books of the Torah. And we know that 2,840 also equals 8 times 355. So we can see that that's got a connection to the sun. So the ordinal has got a connection to the sun through this one verse, but it doesn't just have a connection to the sun, because then we go down to this line here, and we've got the filling out of Yeshua at the highest level possible of Atziluth comes to a regular and ordinal that add up to 659. We've also got Moshe filled out again to the highest, to the level of Atzilut, comes to 455. So these two numbers are connected, and we can see them connected in this verse again. This is always got to unite Yeshua and Moshe together. So we've got the 455 is the ordinal of this entire verse. So we can see how it's directly linked to Moshe. But if we add up the 2,840 plus the ordinal, the 455, it comes to 3,295, which is 5 times 659, connects us back to Yeshua. So again, in this verse, we've got the connection. We've got the connection up here to the entire ordinal books of the Torah. We know we've also got the connection to 355, which is also Pharaoh. Pharaoh comes to 355. Where was Joseph hidden? In disguise, he's disguised as Pharaoh, dressed like Pharaoh. And then we've also got 355 is 5 times 71. And 71 is Yonah. And Yonah symbolises the dove of peace or the bird of redemption. You know, the whole concept of Mashiach, the body of the bird, the right wing of the bird, the left wing of the bird. And it's also 71 is the nations, 70 nations plus 1, Yisrael. It's also the Sanhedrin plus Moshe. So there's lots involved with that. But you can see all the connections are made here. So the sun here, the 355 we can see is related to the 2,840, which is related to the ordinal books of the Torah. So with there we can see that the regular books of the Torah are a revelation of Mashiach ben David, but the ordinal books of the Torah can be seen as a revelation of Mashiach ben Yosef, and those two added together are a revelation also of Moshe. Okay? So it's all absolutely glorious, and it's all connected to this one verse, which about sums up the entire of the process of rectification that we are experiencing in order to bring about, in order to create vessels of peace, and in order to show that even given the evil that we suffered, there's only Yod-Heh-Wav, nothing else beside him. It all depends on making the right connections and right unity. And then we've got this, if you add these two together, it comes to 1,114, which is 2 times 557, 2 times Sarach. I go over that a lot. And also my covenant of peace. So that's what we're wanting to get to. We want to get to that place of peace. We haven't yet got there. Why haven't we not yet got there? Because we haven't made all the right connections. First of all, we haven't united Mashiach with Moshe. We haven't united Yeshua with Moshe fully, and we haven't united that to the concepts and the revelation as found within Islam. The vessels of peace. Beriti can be seen as the covenant with Israel. Shalom is really representing Esav, the nations, because Esav, the gematria of Esav is 376. The gematria of Shalom is 376, and it's down here, who makes peace and creates evil. The evil is from a higher place than the peace. The peace is made on earth, but we've got to transform the evil into peace, because then we're elevating that level of peace. So these are things I've talked about a lot. 116 is the ordinal of Mashiach ben Yosef. So again, we see that's connected to all these. So even in them, Briti, you've got the house of Yehuda and the house of Yosef together, and somehow the Shalom is the nations, the outer Esav, that Israel must make peace with the nations. It must subdue the nations and dominate over them with the truth. And then you've got this look. So Esav went on Mount Seir, Esau, that is Edom. So we're in the Edomite exile now. And we've got the Mispah Gadol is 2,480, exactly the same as this, exactly connected up to the ordinal, which is Mashiach ben Yosef, who is out in the nations disguised as Edom, just as Yaakov was disguised as Esau, in order to gain the blessing. Okay, there's all kinds of connections. This 1,920 is 5 times 384. What is 384? 384 is Mashiach Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, or the Mashiach of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. That's the term used in the Tanach. the Mashiach of Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh, not the Mashiach of our imaginations, not the Mashiach of Yehuda, not the Mashiach of Christianity, not the Mashiach of Islam, but the Mashiach of Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh as revealed in his Torah. And the Mashiach as revealed in his Torah is talking about a Mashiach that is able to unite all the three Abrahamic faiths and the revelation that is contained regarding truth within all those revelations. Also, Moshe comes to 345. The ordinal is 39, as we've pointed out up here. 39 and 345 is 384. Moshe is the umbrella term for the Mashiach. He's the first Redeemer, he's the last Redeemer. Moshe was Yeshua, but elevated up to the level of Mashiach ben Yosef. When he comes again, if he didn't come in the life of Muhammad, which that is my belief, the Mashiach came, or a revelation of Mashiach ben Dawid was involved in that whole founding of Islam. And it's all connected to a soul level of Chaya, the soul, the level of Mashiach ben Dawid, the soul level of Chaya was revealed through the teachings of Islam and the potential to unite us all together as one. Okay, somehow related very much to the revelation that was received in Islam. And I've talked about this a lot. It's all glorious. Okay, let's just go and have a look at some more numbers quickly. So we've got the last letter ayin of the name Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh. The last letter of the name that's missing from Mashiach ben Yosef is the letter ayin. He's called Yeshu derogatorily. In a derogatory way, he's called Yeshu with the ayin removed from his name. It's got a mispar gadol of 780, so we can see it's connected to that. We have got to reveal his true name and the fact that he's truly the Mashiach. So you've got, this is one of the forces of the Erev Rav, the Nephilim, 780. These are the forces, the Erev Rav forces that prevent Yehuda from seeing the truth and from being the intellectual capacity to be able to comprehend that Yeshua is the Mashiach. You need the heart and you need the understanding. You need the paths of wisdom to be fully opened up. You need the 50 gates of understanding to reveal this. And these forces, such as Nephilim, there's 5 forces that Erev Rav have so influenced Judah that they are not able to perceive what is staring at them in the face. You need to have eyes to see. King of Israel and King of the nations, this is what the King of Israel, Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh doesn't desire to just be the King of Israel, he desires to be King of the nations as well. Add them together, 780. Okay. Moshe, 195, which is 4 times 195, 790. We've already gone through that. This is the level of Yetzirah. We've got to transcend that level to get back to Bina, the 50th gates of understanding. So we've got to be able to wrestle with all these forces of exile. That is really the world of Yetzirah. It's really the ladder between heaven and earth. It's really the firmament. It's the whole concept of Mashiach ben Yosef. We've got to grasp. We've got to wrestle with all those forces of exile to get to the top of the ladder, to be able to attain levels of understanding equivalent to, being at the top of the ladder, seeing face to face the name Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh in the way that Yod-Heh-Waw-Heh can be seen face to face, which is through Mashiach ben Yosef. And then we've got the ordinal filling of Asaph to the second filling. So we've got Asaph 43, Asaph the first filling 98, and Asaph the second filling 249. Add them together, come to 390. So 390 times 2 is 780. And we can see again it's related to Moshe, 10 times the ordinal of Moshe. Okay. And then we've got this, for in this manner the king's virgin's daughters were dressed. The mispar gadol ordinally is 390. Again, we can see 2 times 390 is 780. So how was the king's virgin daughters dressed? They were dressed in the ketanet pasim. They were dressed in the multicoloured coat. The exact phrase used to describe the coat that Yaakov made for Yosef is the exact phrase used in the Tanach to describe how the king's virgin's daughters was dressed. So there's a connection between this, it's here, look, ketaneth posim, is exactly the same phrase used for the garment that Yaakov made for Yosef. Okay, so now she had on a striped tunic, for this is the manner the king's virgin's daughters dressed in robes, and his servant brought her outside and locked the door after her. This is talking about Tamar, who was disgraced by her own brother, and then she had this garment torn. Okay, just like Yosef was torn, it was stripped from her and things like that. Okay. But there we can see evidence that she was the garments of Yosef. You can go and have a look at that and read about it. It's all to do with Tamar and the incident that happened there. Lots and lots to think about. This is only the beginning. We've just looked at one of the numbers in the entire gematria of Tisha B'Av. This is Tisha B'Av, the 9th of the month of Av. So there's lots more to come. I hope you subscribe and I hope you share, because it's all wonderful stuff. We've got to try and make this connection. We're coming up to Hanukkah now, so we saw through that book of my friend, The Eye to the Infinite, and this is a real book that you should really invest in. It's unbelievable. It helps us to become more aware of Yod Heh Wah. It helps to divest from some of those exilic ways in which we try and understand God, and we try and understand the Mashiach, and we try and understand Yod Heh Wah. It's very good in terms of helping us to become more conscious of God. So I highly recommend it. However, my phone will just go in. If you pick the vibrations up, I apologise for that. So it's called Eye to the Infinite, and it's by Rabbi Reuben. Aaron Reuben. I don't think he's left his name on there even. But anyway, that's who it's by. Really, really good book, and I suggest that you go and get it. And with that, I will say shalom. Please share and subscribe. Thank you.